But first, back when the Prime Minister called for compassion, not wanting to see tenants evicted if they couldn't pay their rent due to coronavirus job losses, most of us would have thought, but for the grace of God, there go I, and fair enough. I also suspect most of us would have assumed that honesty was part of the bargain. Only it's not. 2 weeks or so from the sound intent of the PM's comments, all of us have heard reports of tenant after tenant now refusing to pay their rent, whether they've lost their job or not, and landlords being told to absorb the hit. It's like last year's federal election fight over negative gearing. It just assumes, of course, that every landlord is rich. Well, wrong. 2/3 are on average earnings. And it also assumes every landlord without rent can just get a mortgage holiday from the bank. Well, wrong again. If they get a mortgage holiday, it of course means a longer mortgage term. And what about those landlords, those self-funded retirees who get nothing from the taxpayer, no pension, nothing at all, but rely on their rental income to live a modest life? At the very least, the tenants can get the dole. These landlords, these self-funded retirees to date, have no money from anyone to replace what they've lost. But it's not just residential leases under pressure, it's commercial leases as well. The trouble is, of course, that everything is connected to everything else, and the moment you make one big change, there are lots of ramifications, not all which are necessarily anticipated, and many of which were not intended if they were. It's, of course, the political law of unintended consequences that actually dominates so much of what governments do and creates so much of the political angst that's usually directed against them. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm in favour of doing everything we reasonably can to protect people against the coronavirus. And if that means a sharp and hopefully short economic shutdown to keep the disease at bay, then I'll stand with the PM on this, because he's doing a Herculean job under extraordinarily difficult circumstances. And whatever your politics, he's batting for Australia here, and so should we. But I just wish we had fully shut our borders a lot earlier than we did and disregarded the complaints of the universities and the China business types who pilloried the government back in early February for the first Hubei province only border closures. These complaints, well, I reckon they made the government blink. That in turn has made all of this much worse than it needed to be, given that we're an island continent and given that 2/3 of our infections have come from overseas. In all of this, I just hope that the economic plan is as well developed as the health plan now seems to be. We don't yet know the numbers, but I've no doubt that over the past 3 weeks, Australia will have copped the sharpest and fastest drop in GDP and rise in unemployment that we've ever seen. Some of this will be masked, perhaps, for the time being, by the JobKeeper payments. Most likely, when this is over, and it will be over, but when it's over, many businesses will never reopen. Now, I hope I'm wrong, but I fear many people may never see full-time employment again. Many of the industries now shut down will take years to fully resume. To be honest, a budget deficit worse than anything I ever saw in the Rudd-Gillard years and the skyrocketing national debt could be the least of our worries. The challenge will be getting the economy back to an even keel so that we can manage the debt and the deficit without lasting impoverishment, and unwinding the welfare state and the billions and billions and billions of dollars of spending over the past few weeks that this health crisis has thrown us all into will be a mammoth task. Because having tried it, I know firsthand, trying to unwind spending once people get used to it is incredibly hard. Right now, even in the eye of this health storm, we need confidence that there's a serious economic plan being worked to, and if that's happening, well, then the detail needs to be communicated more clearly. Because as the PM says, sure, this is about saving lives, but we've also got to save livelihoods.